Alrighty, so welcome to week 3 in CIT82 Intro to Web Development. And at this point, this is close to the time when we get to start talking about the new title of the course, Introduction to AI and Web Development. But we're still quite not there. But you can already see that this content has started to find its way into the course. So I'm glad you're here. We're actually in the RL. So when I say that, what I mean is in the real world for me right now, we're actually at the beginning of week 2. Okay. Now, what I will say is that there is already a good number of you who are working ahead in this class. So if you haven't heard my, and this term may be new to you, maybe not, mantra, the thing I say over and over again, it's actually used in a different context. I'm using it in a different context than it's originally intended. But in my case, I'm using it as a way to help you hear and hopefully have the behavior that allows you to benefit the most from my feedback. I grade weekdays, Monday through Friday in the morning. Well, or in the afternoon in this case, because I'm running a little behind today. But at some point during the day, I grade and I leave feedback for things that you, based on the work you submitted. Working ahead gives you the ability to fix something, resubmit it before the due date. Now, if you don't get that update done, then I will leave that grade. If you do the fix to it after the due date, then it's impacted by late points because I reduce points 25% on work that's submitted after the due date. Now, I hope that's not news to you, but here's the other thing I would tell you. I give all students 2 passes for this class, and what these passes are used for is if you are needing to submit late for whatever reason, I will grade it as on time, meaning all the points, and this is per item. Okay, so if you're wondering about where all this is talked about, it's actually up here in the simple syllabus. Now, up today, and this was something, and again, I'm looking at actually recording on this on the 17th. You may, depending on when you get to week 3, maybe closer to the beginning of week 2. Again, there's a number of you who are working ahead, but we had an issue with GitHub this morning, so I posted an announcement. The reason I'm bringing it up here is kind of a question for you is, did you get that announcement in your email? If you didn't, I suggest you go over to your account here on Canvas, make sure your notifications, and there are so many different ways to set notifications, but for the course level, to get announcement is a great way so that timeliness of these announcements you will be able to benefit more from. Now, by the way, this actually got fixed. The issue with GitHub got fixed, but I provided an alternative for those who were working this morning in week 2. So my point is that check those. Now, the other thing is, as I'm scrolling down here, is that I put our tutor, Brianna Wayburn, I put her content in Canvas so that you have it. Her sessions, and you can see this, I don't need to go through it. There's actually a video introducing herself here, but also just how to get in if you happen to be coming in on Zoom. So she does offer them on Zoom or in LI 131. So check that out. I added that content today. All right, so now let's scroll down past week 2, okay, into week 3, because that's the week we're actually going to be talking about from here forward. Because in week 3, and we'll come back to what's required for attendance in a minute, I'm going to first start talking about what we're going to do. So when we're looking at the Monday night items, we're continuing a free code camp, and we're going to do something called Vibe of the Web. And in this case, we're going to look at Fresno City College's site. And the reason we're going to do this, and we're going to hopefully maybe for those of you that have never done CSS, which is cascading style sheets, which is a way to design, to create visual design, for the users, we're going to ask you to actually look at a site with the intent of pulling out some of the visual designs that you maybe have seen but not brought into the consciousness of, hey, how does that feel? What does that look like? Or whatever. And I give you some prompts in there to look at. But we start the week by going local. And what this means is for many of you that are using CodeSpace, I'm going to have you actually create that local dev environment. It's basically what you have it's what you have out on CodeSpace, but now you're going to have it local. And I walk you through the process of this. Some of you did this in week 1, but many of you still need to do it. And then we'll get into free code camp, the CSS, as I mentioned before. We'll take a look at dev tools, so important. One of the things in discussion board I have you do is embed the images. And one way I check to see if they got embedded and what the file name is, I'll just give you an example of one of the ways, because I use dev tools in many ways. And dev tools is basically that ability to drop into a post, right click and hit inspect and see what is underneath it. And then what I can do is go through it. Now, in this case, I need to actually inspect here. So it drops me in and I can see if that image was embedded correctly. Now, this is just one of many ways that DevTools is used. And I'm going to give you an experience this week of using it. If you've never used it, this is just a welcome to DevTools, because it'll be something, if you continue, which I hope you do, with the web developer program, you will get introduced to them. And we end the week using a site called bolt.new, where you actually you write a prompt that creates a website. And in this case, I'm doing this assignment A just to show you some of the tools that are out there. For many of you, this may not be a surprise, to where your prompt then creates a website through HTML and CSS and other things as well. And the question, and this is where we're going to come back to attendance in a minute, is this a good thing? And there's never usually a one or the other, but in this case, for people who are not interested in doing web development, yeah, this is a great thing to get started. But it will quickly evolve based on what you're trying to do. The more you want to translate this into a professional skill, that prompting of creating that code will only take you so far. As a matter of fact, now having talked about dev tools, being able to dive into what you create or what Bolt creates for you is an important process to see, hey, how much of this do I understand? And if this is completely new to you, again, it will vary based on your experience. So the question would be, should we, right? How much should we think about doing and using these type of tools? Which takes us back to our week 3, okay? Attendance, because, and as I go into week 3, and I went over, I think, almost all of this already, working ahead, late work, tutor. Oh yeah, my office hours are changing, so let me do that before I jump in. This is why I do the list, so I make sure I cover things. So for this particular semester, fall 2026, my office hours are going to be as follows, okay? And you can see this here. And by the way, you really need to look at Simple Syllabus because it has really important information. Those late passes are talked about in there as well. My on-campus office hours are Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And you can see the times. And then on Monday and Friday, sorry, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, no, Monday and Friday, they're only on Zoom. And I give a little caveat in here, is if you need to meet with me on those days, or if those days for whatever work better for you, then just give me a heads up. I'll do my best to be on campus if my schedule aligns, because sometimes I will be traveling on some of those days. Okay. Discord. The other thing I would say before we jump into the material for this week for attendance is that Discord is great for student-to-student communication, because the time you're working could be very well maybe different than the time I work. So this is where, if you are working on something, you just want to ask somebody a question, of course you can email me. Just know I'm probably not going to see it until the next day. And using Discord is intended for student-to-student communication. And so that's really its intent. It's not intended for you to necessarily connect with me. By the way, if you are posting on Discord and it's a time I'm available and I see it, I will attempt to answer it. So just know that our schedules could be different. This is part of why Discord is there. But the most important thing is for you to get help when you need it. And the benefit of working ahead gives you some of that time to get help. So there's just huge amount of benefits in taking a skill-based course where working ahead is so important. Okay, so for this week's attendance, we're going to watch. I definitely recommend watching the entire thing. Something that I know is top of mind for me as an educator, and I think as society and as culture and as just many levels, I see this hitting our world is the paradox of AI. Because, AI can code, going back to our coding exam, discussion with Bolt.new, should we allow AI to code? But we could extend that concept to just our cognitive ability and how much should we outsource to AI and what are the impacts? Because the video actually traces some very fundamental topics, a little bit historic, but then it brings it back to a study where they had students write an essay in 3 different ways with AI, with Google search, and on their own, and how much they were able to retain. And retention is part of it, but it's also, and they give this example of children, right? How they learn to speak, right? Is they first mimic, but ultimately the word formation gives them the ability to think. And if we, in this case, bypass our thinking and give it to AI, there's going to be some real downsides, right? I mean, this is just the reality. So how do we, in our world that we live, use AI in a way that helps us become better thinking humans? And it is, I mean, there's no easy answers here. Trust me, I've wished there was. But this is also the nature of technology, right? I mean, we've been talking for many years about how much human consciousness has been impacted by AI. I mean, the whole idea of the taxi driver back in London and how they used to be able to track and know how to navigate a huge city like London without a map, and what happened to them once they got a map. And so I use that example to sometimes not use a map, just think, well, here's where I'm going. Can I find my way there? Anyway, many examples we could do here. So what you're going to do, watch the whole video, right? And I give you some things to reflect on here, so make sure you cover them. And the second one is really related to what I talked about before with coding. And then identify a human skill. That's going to be hard for AI to do this, right? It makes us, how it makes us feel so productive, right? Now, for me, the way I use AI in my writing is I draft my message and then I have AI help me make it clearer, right? Because I can just brain dump, do a draft, and then I refine it. That is the process I use. So could I not do it? Yeah, but I get a better output, but it's still my thought process. And that for me is the important in writing. But in writing code, no, I wouldn't let it. That's a skill I want to have and continue to develop on my own. So, and then you're going to engage with each other, right? Identify, did they identify a human? This is just one of the examples of prompts. You could read anything into there. I just kind of gave you one to think about here, but really just read their posts and, reply accordingly. Okay. All right. So, I think that's it. I think that's all I had for week 3. So welcome. Hang in there. Week 3 of 9. Remember, there's a back 9 course that is kind of the accompanying course. So this is Introduction to Web Development, Introduction to AI and Web Development, and then there's the HTML and CSS. So that will come after this class. I hope, if you're not already signed up, and I think a few of you have already taken, so that's not an issue for you. But if you are interested to continue what you're getting here, please consider taking 85. All right, have a great one. See you later.